There are vast swathes of the world where it is extremely difficult to be gay or to be a woman. But we will not be able to sustain an asylum system if, in effect, simply being gay or a woman or fearful of discrimination in your country of origin is sufficient to qualify for protection.
Now, this is what Sir Elton and his husband David Furnish had to say in response. Nearly a third of all nations class LGBTQ+ people as criminals, and homosexuality is still punishable by death in 11 countries, dismissing the very real danger LGBTQ+ communities face, risks further legitimising hate and violence against them. So, Angela, surely Suella's got this wrong.
I don't think she has. I think what she's saying is it's, without wishing to sound crude or bloodless, being gay or being female is a get-out-of-jail card. There is a difference between persecution and discrimination. Now, we need people that come here on a legal basis to do so in a sustainable way. That being that there is genuinely a reason for them to be in fear for their life. The UK's got a good history of being a welcoming country over over our recent history. But that doesn't mean that just because you are female and in certain cultures, it's more difficult to attain certain situations, or you may have discrimination in the workplace or whatever, that's a reason to come.
Give me the distinct difference between persecution and discrimination.
So I would say, in my very humble opinion, I would say persecution has loaded in its title some kind of implication of a violent threat to your existence, or to having any kind of situation where you don't feel vulnerable to actually just living your life as it is. So, for example, in newsrooms of old, newspaper rooms of old, the men could be a bit discriminating, not just newsrooms, all sorts of office situations. Was that persecution? It became persecution.
It still can be, but
yes. It becomes persecution. I promise you I'll finish quickly. It becomes persecution when somebody gets someone in a dark corner and makes a threat about the fact that if you don't oblige...
OK, I honestly, I can't listen a second longer, Angela. I can't believe you are actually agreeing with Suella Braverman, who talk of hate and discrimination and disgust. She disgusts me. She disgusts how she talks, what she represents, and how she's talking about the gay community, who already... These countries, it's not just... You're saying that's the difference. In the 1951 Convention, it is a real fear. Their lives are at risk. They can die, and women can be stoned to death. They've got a fear of that.
So you've answered my own point. By saying about fear, which is the point that I'm making about the difference between discrimination and persecution.
But you're watering down discrimination as if discrimination... They can't live their lives. Well, actually, that was a little bit of bullying, or it might be a bit of it. They are in real fear. How can you decide what is their fear and what is their discrimination? How can you decide that?
That's the whole point of an asylum system, which assesses based on
But they do assess that already.
Basis.
They don't just come over to this country and say, well, I'm gay, OK, you get a free pass. Actually, they do have a system in place for that. And actually, what you're trying to say is that actually these people are coming over and they are really in fear of their lives, women, gay men, those communities, that actually they're lying. Why should they stay? Why have we not got our responsibilities?
Because it's a safe place.
Why do we not take our responsibilities? Why do France, Germany, all those other countries take their responsibilities? But we, Britain, Suella Braverman is trying to say, we're not going to take our... We have a moral responsibility to be looking after... We're part of that convention. We've signed. We're signatories to this convention.
I'm quite aware of the 1951 convention.
So therefore, we have obligations, Angela, do we not?
I'll tell you what the difference is. When people come to this country by illegal methods, as a result...
They don't have any other methods, so let's not go down that route.
No, I think it's an important route to go down, because if they're being trafficked or exploited by these heinous gangs, because they're leaving a place of safety, and I know the argument if the water is safer than the land, but the land is safe in France, and they choose to get to Britain by illegal means, then they are prepared to put their lives at risk when they've left a place where their lives were at risk.
Let me just jump in here. It is an interesting point that both of you bring up. When we talk about safe and legal routes, if you are, and it was a question put to Suella Braverman and she struggled to answer this, if you're a 12-year-old boy in Afghanistan, orphaned boy looking for safe asylum, how do you apply to get that asylum in Britain?
OK, so we need better. There's no question that we need better processing methods. We need somewhere on the...
We don't just need better, we need processing methods.
So in 2 years.
In
2 years
France,
so far.
no, but before they leave the French coast, because as soon as they leave the French coast, I don't want to see children dying in the Channel. I'm speaking as a humanitarian.
Angela, can I ask you a question? Why do they all, if they're legally, they're allowed to come over to this country, to Britain, why should France have all the responsibility?
No,
why do Britain not take their... Why does Suella Braverman think that we don't need to have our moral obligations and our legal obligations to take our quota?
Because you're dealing with a system whereby people are coming, because they're coming illegally.
They don't have, I'm not going to go, they don't have any other choice coming illegally. They can only come illegally.
They have a choice by suggesting whether they want to step into an overcrowded dinghy on a rough patch of water and run the risk of, every time I hear about people drowning in the Channel.
That shows the desperation.
No, but if they're so... Shall
I tell you what I think Suella's doing? This is distraction politics. They've got no intention, this government has got no intention to sort out the asylum backlog, illegal immigration, the small boats president. All she's doing is making headlines. She's talking to the... you know what she's coming across as? A racist. She's the brown face pushing racist rhetoric and homophobic rhetoric. She is the brown face being allowed to push this.
That is your opinion, but actually what Suella Braverman is saying is that she said 780 million people would be able to claim asylum in this country.
Where's she got that figure from?
OK, well I mean, you can criticise that figure, but if every single woman and every single person from the LGBTQ community from the rest of the world decided to come to this country, perhaps the figure would be too high for us to cope with. Would you agree with that?
No,
if that was true.
No, because they don't all decide to come to Britain.
Well, that is the point.
Hang on a second, you're arguing against yourself.
No,
you've just unravelled your own
argument. She's lying about that figure. Where's this figure come from, firstly?
I want to come back to another thing. So what Suella is saying, I'm playing devil's advocate with you, what Suella is saying here is that with that in mind, because you can't have one rule for you, one rule for you, if we allow people to come in that are being discriminated against on the basis of being female, on the basis of being gay, whatever it is, then everybody that faces those discriminations have to be allowed in. So what she's saying is we need to reassess the thresholds. Isn't it appropriate to reassess thresholds in legislation after 70 years? That's
no, I don't think it is, actually, because the UN have responded.
So laws that are in place now have to be in place forever?
Well, the UN have responded to this and said, actually, we need a collective, national, worldwide, we all need to have our responsibilities, a.k.a. Britain needs to take its responsibilities.
You just said a moment ago they don't all need to come to this country, yet
you said,
why wouldn't they come to this country?
I said they
Your
don't
argument is totally muddled.
No,
well, you're muddling me.
They don't all want to come to this country, by the way. They don't all want to come to... And actually, most of these people are in desperate need. Have some compassion. They don't want to leave their countries. They are forced to leave their countries. And guess what? They don't land in Britain. All of this figure, they don't all land in Britain. They don't want to come to Britain. Do you think they want to come here with the kind of talk they're hearing from our ministers?
Narinder, at that point, I just want to jump in and take a call. Jan from East Sussex, what's your thoughts? You've heard what the panel have to say?
I absolutely have. I am with Suella. I think, as you said earlier, Storm, that the line needs to be drawn in a different place. And absolutely, people who are at fear of their life, yes, let them in. People who are experiencing some sort of discrimination in their everyday life, but they're not actually fearful.
Jan, I'm going to have to stop you there because you are breaking up. I don't know if you slightly moved there, but I hear what you're saying. You agree with Suella. Do you not think, though, Suella's language and the fact she's bringing up this 780 million, which I don't know where she's got this figure from, and it is quite inflammatory, the language that she is using?
I think Suella is, to some degree, she is reflecting how people in the community feel. Definitely in my community feels, which is a frustration.
I just wonder, Jan, whether she's reflecting it or stoking it.
I think she's reflecting it. I think there is a lot of, especially amongst older people, which I am, a lot of frustration, a lot of fear. I fear for my children, for my grandchildren.
Fear is an interesting point. Now, I'm just going to pick up on that, because when we look at the amount of people that state being homosexual or from the LGBTQ plus community as a reason for their need to seek asylum in this country, we're talking about 1% of people seeking asylum. So do you not think it is an interesting community for Suella Braverman to pick up on in this speech?
I think probably what it was it's a reasonable premise to make the discrimination between what is happening and what is not. Obviously, there are lots more people that could be included within that, but I think that gave a clear example of something. I am not anti-gay, I am not anti-immigration, but we are a small country. We can't take everybody, and we need to take the people who are in real and genuine fear of their lives.
Jan, thank you very much for your call.
That's the point that, you know, Jan hits the nail on the head. We're talking about people, when you asked me before about persecution, fear of imminent peril, fear of imminent threat to one's life. And by saying women, that suddenly it suggests that all women are in some way subjugated. And actually it does, as women, it does us a disservice, because it's
in Afghanistan, they are.
I'm sure they are.
So how do you know when they are imminent?
They're being sold.
Pardon?
Surely we would...
They're being stoned. They can't wear what they want. They can't speak.
So exactly. So any human being, be it male or female, who is in that appalling situation, has a right to try and seek sanctuary elsewhere.
And they do.
But this idea of women, the idea is that somehow it might be exploited, is the fear that we have at the bottom of this conversation.
Zara from London, you're up next. What's your thoughts? Are you with Sir Elton or are you with Suella?
I'm with Sir Elton, and I'd also like to ask why it's different for the Ukrainian refugees, that we've welcomed them and given them refuge, and, you know, they're going through what they're going through, but why are the rules different for different people?
I hear
we
you.
don't mention
Angela,
them.
it's a fair point, because when we're talking about these safe and legal routes, we created safe and legal routes for Ukrainian refugees and asylum seekers and, you know, those fleeing the war. Why not others?
I agree that, first of all, I deplore competitive suffering. So this idea that one person...
This isn't competitive, this is just wondering why one group of people are...
I appreciate why you have to ask the question, absolutely. That one drop of blood is more painful than another. We're talking about a conflagration going on in Ukraine, and there was a need to reach out, and those who have literally been forced out of their homes by war...
There was in Afghanistan.
They're offered a safe and legal...
We withdrew and left people that were helping us. We left Afghan pilots.
If you could just...
To, by the way, go on the small boats.
So take a breath.
Okay, let Angela finish her point.
That I absolutely agree. There should be parity. I'm not saying that one is better than the other. All I'm saying is, Ukraine, we had safe and legal passage. We need to go give those who are clearly deserving and in need, men, women, children, whatever their sexual profile is, whatever their gender identification is, if they're facing imminent peril, I agree. What I disagree with is those that are just using that opportunity, because Suella has rather clumsily put it into compartments, as a way to exploit.
Well, she's quite hatefully put it in, not clumsily.
I don't know. I disagree.
Do you think